Good afternoon or good evening and welcome. Thank you so much to the Education USA Canada and Fulbright for the opportunity to speak to student athletes to talk today about NCAA initial eligibility. So my name is Elizabeth Thompson. I am our Associate Director of International Outreach and Strategic Partnerships here at the NCAA Eligibility Center. A few things that we're going to cover today: the registration process to get registered with the NCAA, what are core courses, what subjects you need to be studying in secondary school in order to be eligible to receive a sports scholarship, what grade point average or grades you need to earn in those core courses in order to be eligible to compete for an NCAA school, and the requirements for Division I and Division II sports at the NCAA level. And we'll wrap things up with some resources for you today. So 3 important pieces to track on in the eligibility process are the secondary school graduation, so what you need to do in order to graduate secondary school, NCAA initial eligibility, which I'm going to be covering today, and then the university admissions process. Things that are important to note in this process is that the admissions process is separate from sports eligibility. So what that means is that the requirements to play or participate with the university's team will be different than what it requires to get into or be admitted to those universities. So never make the assumption that because you're admitted, you're eligible to compete for the team, or that because you're recruited by the team and deemed eligible by the NCAA that you're admitted. Those are 2 separate things that you should be tracking on in the college application or university application process. And then important questions to ask during that process are, what is the cost of attendance? What is financial aid options are available or being offered by the university? The NCAA no longer requires an SAT or ACT test score in order to be eligible to compete for a school, but many universities do require it as part of their admissions requirements. Some schools you may be eligible for more financial aid if you have an SAT or ACT test score. So just keep that in mind. If you have the opportunity to take an SAT or ACT, that can only help you in your process, but it is not a requirement for NCAA eligibility. So next we'll talk about the registration process. Every student athlete who wishes to compete for a Division I, II, or III university must be registered with the NCAA, and you can do that at our website, which is eligibilitycenter.org. And you'll see right there in the center of our website the register button to get started. We encourage it as young as grade 9 because you can start with this free profile page account. And then once the recruiting process starts, so if you're contacted by a coach or a university, which typically can happen after grade 10, beginning of grade 11, that's when you would want to transition over to our certification account. But that free profile page, there is no cost associated with it. So if you have your smartphone out this evening, you can scan that first QR code there. We'll also have some additional QR codes throughout this presentation. I'll get in touch with Jenica to make sure you all have a PDF of this slide deck, or you can have this after this evening's event as well. But the free profile page is just that. It is free. There's no cost associated with it. And that gets you into the NCAA system and starts getting you the information that you need in order to maintain and stay on track towards being eligible upon graduation. So then at any time, once you start being actively recruited by coaches, that is when there'll be a button in that account that you can transition from the free profile page over to the certification account that's appropriate for you. So there are 2 different options. One is the full academic and amateurism certification account that you see here. That's what you would need to sign with a school, what was formerly called our National Letter of Intent program. It's now an athletics aid agreement. So receiving an athletic scholarship to go on an official visit at a Division I or II school, to do any of those things, you need this account type. There is a one-time registration fee for US students as well as Canadian students of $100 US. And for international students, meaning those students outside of the US and Canada, it would be a $160 US fee. eligibility. The third account type is an amateurism only certification account. If you have that second account type, you don't need both. That account covers everything. But if you know specifically that you want to go to a Division III college or university and you have your eyes set on just a D3 school, this is the amateurism only certification account, which is for international student athletes wishing to participate at a Division III school. And for the definition and purposes for Division III, students from Canada would be international student athletes, would need this account type. So again, that second account type gets you to all three divisions, but if you know specifically you're only interested in a Division III school, you can use just this account type, which is for amateurism certification only. There is a one-time US $70 fee associated with this account. So the NCAA Eligibility Center certifies student athletes for competition at Division I, II, and III schools. And what we're looking at is every student all across the world, both US and international, your coursework from year 9 through graduation in order to determine your academic eligibility and to ensure that there's fairness and consistency in eligibility of all student athletes across our nearly 1,100 colleges and universities. So that's why it's required for every student to register with the NCAA, have your transcripts submitted by your school counselor, and then be certified as eligible to meet the requirements that I am about to cover. So the first thing I'll talk about is Division I academic requirements. 16 core course credits are required for Division I eligibility. So looking at your transcripts from grade 9 through grade 12, those first 4 years or 8 semesters. So it would not, if you repeated a year, it would not include that 5th year, just the first 4 years of coursework starting with your initial enrollment in grade 9. These are the subject areas that you must have. So 4 years of English or a native language, mathematics at the Algebra 1 or higher, sciences, social sciences, and any additional core courses such as world languages, comparative religion, philosophy, etc. So if you scan this country specific QR code here, I'll leave this up for just a moment. This will take you to our resources where you can actually search for the list of approved courses, the grading scale conversions, and other helpful information for your province. So if you're joining us this evening and you attend school in Ontario, Canada, I'll show you in just a moment what that looks like. So that QR code will take you to this web page of ours, and then you would select on North America as your region, and that would then take you to a list of countries. You would select Canada. Canada then would have a breakdown list of all of the different provinces and territories. And this is what the example looks like for students from Ontario, Canada. So you'll see background information on the academic calendar, what could be an approved native language if you've taken French as a native speaker, for example, what's the acceptable form of proof of graduation, what are the credit values that we award courses. So everything in Ontario, for example, is worth 1 credit with the exception being Civics CHV 2.0. which is worth a half a credit for the year, but it's also where you would find the list of approved core courses based on course code and course title. So that begins on page 3 of that PDF. That's where you can find broken down by subject areas. So a list of all the approved English or native language courses, the same thing with math, sciences, and so forth for all of the disciplines that are required. You can find that there. Next, we'll talk about grade point averages and those requirements. So typically the US operates on a 4.0 grading scale, which means for NCAA eligibility, we're going to be looking at that 4.0 grading scale. So A's are a 4 on that 4.0, the highest grade that you can get. B's are a 3, C's are a 2. D's are 1 and F's are worth nothing. So that means when I talk in an upcoming slide about the grade point average that you need in order to be eligible. So for example, for Division I, it's a 2.3. So that means you need to have in your 16 core courses an average higher than C grades. And so you may be asking, well, what is a C in my province or territory? Here's an example of the Ontario grading scale, those 100-point numeric grades, and how those convert to the US grade equivalent. So if I said you need a 2.3 or higher in your 16 NCAA core courses, that means that your courses must be on average higher than a 60 to a 69, which is a C. So you want to try to get more 70s and above in order to keep that GPA above a 2.0, closer, above a 2.3, closer to the 3.0 range. And we would just be looking at the 16 core courses in the required discipline. So you'd have to have 4 years of an English or native language. You have to have 3 years of a mathematics that's on that approved core course list. And then we would calculate your grade point average in those subjects based on those specific credits using this grading scale conversion. Next is the importance of making sure that your academic records are submitted. So if you're joining us this evening from Ontario, we do need the official Ontario transcript for grades 9 through 12. It can be emailed from a school official's email address. So that means if you have a school counselor, someone at your school that is in charge of the academic records, they can email your transcript attached. So we cannot accept links or password protected PDFs, but they can send an attached document with your name and NCAA ID number in the subject line to us directly, and then that would get that attached to your NCAA account. So if you're wondering what an NCAA ID number is, once you register with the NCAA, you'll be assigned a 10-digit NCAA ID number. That stays with you throughout your time in secondary school, as well as when you become an NCAA student athlete, and that's how we identify you and your account in our system. So you'll get that once you register. You can just provide that to your school official and ask them to include your name and ID number in the subject line of the email when they send that off to us. And then once you graduate secondary school, so we say one transcript should be sent that has grades 9 through 11 on it. And then once you have graduated, we would want the final transcript that has grades 9 through 12 and then proof of graduation. So on an Ontario transcript, it's typically noted along the bottom with the OSSD, and then the month and year in which it was awarded is what we typically see on the bottom of those. So that's what suffices for proof of graduation. So you may be wondering, where should they send this to? So keep those smartphones out, snap a picture. Again, you should be getting the PDF after today's event, but the school is the only one that can send an email in academic records. It cannot be sent by the student, by a coach, by a parent. It has to come from the school official via their school email address, and they should send that to ec-processing@ncaa.org. So next we will briefly talk about certification outcomes. So there are multiple different outcomes that can occur for Division I, but for the purposes of time today, we're going to focus on what you need to do to be a qualifier, because that's what we want everyone to do, is to be an academic qualifier. So a qualifier we define as someone who is immediately eligible to receive a scholarship, or what's known as athletics aid, and immediately eligible to practice and compete with an NCAA schools team. So in order to be a qualifier, you must complete 16 core course credits in the required subject areas that we previously went over. If you have a combination of international, meaning Canadian, and US coursework, there is a core course progression requirement. But if all of your schooling has been in Canada or outside of the US, then those students are exempt from that progression requirement. You can find more information on our website about that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that GPA, that grade point average in those 16 core courses, must be a 2.3 or higher on that 4.0 scale. And then lastly, you must graduate high school and submit proof of that graduation to the Eligibility Center in your account. Division II, there are multiple different outcomes. What we're going to focus on today is qualifier, as well as one of the great benefits of choosing Division II, partial qualifier. So the definition is the same for qualifier at Division II. If you are a qualifier, you're eligible for scholarship, practice, and to compete with the team immediately. I always tell student athletes, if you aim for Division I eligibility, then by default, you'll be Division II eligible as well. So just know that that's an easy thing to do, is aim for Division I eligibility, and then by default, you would be eligible for both divisions. But Division II is just slightly different. You still need those same 16 core courses. The GPA for Division I, if you remember, was 2.3. The GPA minimum for Division II is 2.2. So easy way to remember that, D2, 2.2. And you also have to have proof of high school or secondary school graduation and have that submitted on your Eligibility Center account. One of the really great things about Division II, I myself attended a Division II school, is that just a few years ago, Division II did away with a non-qualifier. So what that means is that every student, as long as you have graduated high school at minimum, can be a partial qualifier for D2. So we understand that, life happens, things might have happened as to a reason why you couldn't get to those 16 core courses, or maybe you had something happen, in your family or to you during high school or secondary school that affected your grades, that made it to where you don't meet that 2.2 minimum grade point average in those core courses. As long as you're still graduating secondary school, and if you choose a Division II college or university, at minimum, you would be able to receive a scholarship and practice with the team as a partial qualifier. It just means that in that first year, you would not be eligible to compete with the team. But how eligibility works is you have a 5-year clock to use 4 seasons. So essentially, this would allow you to do what we call redshirting, or being an academic redshirt in your first year. So still be able to receive scholarship money tied to athletics and be able to practice with the team. You just wouldn't compete in the first year and could use up to 4 seasons after that if you had full eligibility. So it's a really great opportunity for student athletes to where, life may have happened and things may have happened that have prevented them from being immediately eligible at the Division I level. But the end goal, remember, is to go to university to get a degree that's going to set you up for success for the rest of your life. So do not rule out Division II colleges and universities if things happen, because there's still opportunity there for everyone. So I mentioned earlier those academic requirements for Division I and Division II. If you scan this QR code, that will give you a digital copy of those to your phone so that you can have those. It also has hyperlinks of all of the resources that we've talked about in there for you to be able to click through on your phone. I would encourage you, parents, family members, those supporting these student athletes, and even the student athletes in the room this evening, if you have any team group chats, the coach, whomever you can send this out to for awareness, be sure to share those with those in your community. So we appreciate you coming here this evening and learning about NCAA initial eligibility. And you're going to hear next about a student athlete experience on campus. But it's important to share the information that you have learned with others in your sporting community, within your community in your country, so that that information and that awareness can be spread to help others become eligible for scholarships as well. So I mentioned briefly Division III. Division III does not offer athletically based scholarships. So what that means is all of their scholarship money or financial aid is based on academics. And so for that reason, student athletes do not have to go through being NCAA certified academically, but Division III has opted for all students who have attended school or competed on a school based outside of the United States that they need to be certified as amateurs in their sport. So if you are looking to go to a Division III university, just know that we will be reviewing your amateurism just to certify you to compete at a Division III school. And then lastly, I'm just going to talk about a few resources are here for you to take away after today and review. We have an international newsletter that goes out periodically that I would encourage you to scan the QR code and sign up for. There's really great information and resources. Anytime we do webinars, you would be able to find all of those. We have a YouTube channel and a playlist on there specifically dedicated for international students that would just be a great resource for you, your family, your teams, your school counselors. I would encourage you to share these with as well, but lots of other resources on that page you see listed here as well. The flyer that I mentioned, course titles, policy for awarding credit, our website, eligibilitycenter.org, where you would register, and then again, those country-specific web pages where you can find resources that we did earlier in the presentation today. And then lastly, as we wrap things up with resources, I would highly encourage everyone to follow us on social media. We all know that we're doom scrolling on our phones way more than we should, but that's a great way for things to pop up on your feed or on your For You page with reminders of things that you need to do throughout your secondary school career in order to stay on track for eligibility. There are great resources about the recruiting process, how to get recruited, what recruiting terms mean. There are recruiting calendars that are broken down by sport. So whatever your social media of choice is, I would encourage you to scan the QR code or scan all of the QR codes and follow us on social media. That way we can ensure that you're getting real-time updates. There's a lot changing in the world of college athletics right now. So it's good to stay up to date on any potential future changes. So just be sure to follow us on X or Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Again, thank you so much for joining this evening and for being a part of this. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but really glad that Jenica reached out and I have the opportunity to speak to all of you. If you think of any questions or have any questions after this evening and would like to reach out to the NCAA directly, you can scan the QR code there to connect with the Eligibility Center. Also, we have our phone number that's on the screen that you see Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or via email for any of our friends in the Quebec area, ec-international@ncaa.org. And thank you so much for your time this evening. We appreciate it.